My name's Guy Kestevan. I've been a professional mountain biking kit tester for well over a quarter of a century, and this is my tech talk around on Trek's Top Fuel 9. So this is generation 4 of the Top Fuel, and in that time it's gone from being a very light, very race-focused, sub 100mm travel bike to kind of definitely in the last incarnation and kind of in the incarnation before that, being much more of a lightweight trail bike, and that trajectory definitely continues with this new bike. So although it comes set up with a 130mm fork and nominally a 120mm rear travel, it's easy to extend the rear stroke on that shock to give 130mm of rear travel and put up to a 140mm fork in there. Plus, it'll actually take a piggyback shock from Fox or RockShox, and it'll even take a mullet in the back end if you want. And the new geometry and features also kind of inform that more aggressive, it's not even down country, if that was ever a word. It's definitely a lightweight trail bike now. So Top Fuel is available in carbon or alloy versions, and the 9 and lower numbers, well, basically if it's got a single number, it's an alloy frame, but that still means it gets all the same features as the carbon frames. So you've got an improved internal storage system. They've slightly changed the latch. The actual kind of surround is a bit neater. The cable routing and trunking inside is also less likely to get in the way of your bag as you pull it out, and production bikes will come with a proper zipped pouch, which is more space efficient than this older neoprene roll. So that's not the bag you'll get on the bike. You'll get a better bag, bits they call it, Bontrager internal tool system or something like that. But anyway, yeah, you'll get a better bag than this one. This has come with a with an old style bag. But even on this alloy bike, you're getting a reasonable amount of storage space, especially if you go upriver as well as downriver of that hatch there. And it's got a nice, secure, easy lock-in lever now. You've also got extra storage up there. You've got a couple of tool mounts there, although, as you can see, even on this medium-large frame, that's relatively close because this bike has a really sloping top tube and low standover height, which is obviously great for crotch clearance, but means it is a little bit cramped in there, and it's a single bottle system. There's nothing on the belly, and obviously the shock sits there, so you're not getting a bottle in there. New for the Top Fuel in this iteration is the fact it's got a split linkage. It's normally always been a one-piece rocker linkage before, but now it's two separate pieces on either side. Trunnion-mounted shock, so you've got a bearing in there on the bushing for smoothness. And down here, you've actually got a 4-position flip chip now. Used to be a high-low flip chip, but now it's actually got a 4.5 position, and that changes the progression of the shock from 14% to 19%. I've actually got it in the more progressive setting. Kinematic is pretty much exactly the same in terms of suspension behaviour as the previous bike, but as you can see, reasonable amount of tyring. You can get a 2.5 in there, up to a 34-tooth chainring clearance, and then moving back here, you've got a nice chunky chain protector, and then Trek's ABP, active braking pivot, rear suspension pivot. And that's basically, it means the bearing for the rear pivot is concentric to the axle. And that means less influence on the suspension from braking. It doesn't jack up, it doesn't squat down. It's much more neutral, and the suspension behaves as it's supposed to, even when you're relatively hard on the anchors. Not that a SRAM level 4 pot is going to have a huge amount of torque through the rotor, but we'll talk about the kit in a minute. And going back to the shock, while it comes with a 50mm stroke, well, nominally anyway, turns out there's a really big bottom-out bumper in it that actually stops it getting to full travel. So I was getting about 112mm of travel out of it, tops, in its default setting. You can cut down that bottom-out bumper if you fancy getting some surgery in there, which does give it, the full travel it's supposed to have, so it brings it up to 120. And then you can actually get inside the shock, take out the volume spacers, and that brings the stroke up to 55mm, which means you're actually getting 130mm of travel out the back end. So or, it's not a case of needing a new shock. You've just got to get in there, or get, your favoured suspension technician to get in there and open up that shock stroke in that Fox Float shock. Pretty easy to do. You might need a couple of new screws if you make a bit of a hash of chopping down the screws that hold the piston head together. But apart from that, as long as you're clean, patient, and methodical, or lucky in my case when you just butcher it, it's a really, really easy swap to make if you fancy getting that extra travel on the bike. I would say, though, while we're on the subject, putting it to 130 at the back, while this Fox Rhythm fork felt like it was coping fine, and to 130, as soon as I turned that back end to 130mm, that fork really started to feel like it was struggling. I mean, it's only a cheap and relatively basic fork, but that back end is so good in the 130mm setting that it definitely started, the fork definitely became the limiting factor. So if you are going to change the rear, be prepared to change the fork quite shortly afterwards. And that's not quite as simple either, because those are actually different legs to the standard 34. So I don't think, I'll check with the guys at Fox, but I don't think you can upgrade the cartridge, even though you could theoretically change the air spring on it to give it more travel. You'd still be stuck with that basic grip damper cartridge in there. And as well as being able to extend the travel, you're also looking at pretty progressive angles for this bike, even its default trim. So it's 65.5 or 65.9 head angle, depending where you have that flip chip. And that's the big change, to be honest, with this Gen 4. Head angle degree slacker, 76.2 or 76.6 degree seat angle. And then reach is relatively short on this medium large, 462 or 467. So that is more of a cross-country figure rather than a super stretched out trail figure. And then the back end, Trek say it's size specific, but it isn't really. You've got two different sizes. Small and medium get one size, and medium, large, and extra large get a slightly longer one. So it's, it's between 439 and 440 effectively, depending on where you have that flip chip on the bottom of the shock. So interestingly, probably the dimensions that really stand out are the fact it's got a very, very short seat tube, so 420mm, and also kind of keeping its XC aspirations alive. It's got a short head tube as well, so only 110mm, which with this relatively low rise bar, as I said on the very first run of my Live Rider video, it gives it quite a low and aggressive front end. And in terms of the rest of the kit, it's mostly really following up on that trail potential as well. You've got these Gunnison Pro, I hesitate to use the word new for these Gunnison Pro tyres, because they're effectively the XR4 that's just been relabeled. But they're a really good, aggressive all-rounder in a kind of intermediate compound that rolls well, but those big side knobs and reasonably spaced tread, that grips as well as you would hope it would. So again, decent trail tyre, relatively chunky Bontrager line Comp 30 alloy rims, but tubeless ready, obviously, and tough and durable wheel. One thing I would say, the bearings don't tend to last super well in the Bontrager wheels, so do keep an ear out for them sounding a bit dry and hollow. Coming up to the bars again, these grips, wasn't the biggest fan. They've got a bit of a waffle on them, but they are pretty firm. So if you like firm grips, then happy days. But otherwise, if you want a bit more comfort, I'd say definitely consider putting a mushroom grip on something else. Maybe someone like PT's. He picks that name, obviously from the air, not because they're a channel sponsor. And again, level brakes are definitely an XC brake in terms of bite. So not particularly powerful. No, they're pretty limp. Let's be honest, they're pretty limp. They look slick. They've got the new stealth routing on them, which keeps the lever close to the bar. But if they're increasing travel, I can see a brake upgrade coming along quite quickly afterwards. Although just changing the rotors to the SRAM HS2 would give you an extra 15%. And also, if you upsize the rotor as well, that'll give you about another 20% of braking power. So you could get them to be a reasonable brake, at least for short descents. I have pumped them out and overheated them on longer descents on an e-bike. So, they're never going to be an Alpine happy brake, but you could get a lot more short-term stopping power out of them with just a rotor upgrade. SRAM axis providing the transmission, so you've got that little pod controller under the bar there, and then it's a Bontrager Line Pro 35 carbon bar. Again, quite a stiff bar, so together with the grips, that's not the most forgiving front end, especially when that Fox rhythm fork starts being driven hard by the back end. But if you keep the rear shock in 110, then it's perfectly reasonable performance up front. You know, the whole bike hangs really, really well together as it comes set up. Bontrager or Trek supply the line seat post as well. Again, it's fairly generic seat post. The lever's okay. It's quite a nice organic shape. It's a bit mushy in feel. But the big bonus here is you're getting a 34.9mm shaft, which means a nice big stanchion, which means a nice stiff, reliable post. It's a decent stroke, and big fan of Bontrager saddles, have to say, and there's no exception with this Verse Comp cut out in the middle. Very comfy, no complaints at all. And then moving down here, you've got SRAM GX chainring. It's a 30 tooth on this bike, but like I say, it can take a 34 tooth if you've got the power and the purpose to propel something bigger. Then at the back, you've got GX rear mech, which interesting. You know, it's the most evolved of all the MTB rear mechs at the moment, because it's the only one where they actually put that battery up on top of the rear mech, where it's more protected and less likely to get clipped and fall out. So a bit weightier than the more expensive mechs, but performance is absolutely spot on. Then you've got 1052 rear cassette, and of course it's T-type, which means slower but really sure-footed. Basically flawless shifting. You just have to be a bit more patient for it to click between gears, because it's got those narrow, wide teeth on the cassette for maximum chain retention, rather than having a standard tooth profile on there. £4,000 for an alloy frame bike. You could obviously find something that's got a better specification for the money, but you've got to factor in the fact that Trek offer a lifetime warranty. They've generally got very good reputation for customer service, and I'm going to put this out there, Trek are one of those brands that invest really heavily in, and always have done, in things like trail advocacy, trail building, all the kind of really woke stuff that I go to. If it's a very good cause, Trek will almost certainly be involved in it. And at the end of the day, that costs money. But it's, you know, but I fully respect a brand for actually investing in the sustainable growth and support of our sport, rather than just going for the bottom line. So if you want to fight about that in the comments, bring it on. And while at 14.67 kilograms, for this medium large without pedals, I mean, it's heavier than Specialized new Chisel FS, which is a considerably cheaper bike with heavier spec. That's only a 120mm bike tops, whereas this obviously has that potential to push further into that sort of trail zone with some, you know, useful features like the internal storage, like the shock adjustment on there. It's actually surprisingly competitive with a lot of carbon fiber complete bikes. And Trek have saved a significant amount of weight out of the frame compared to the Generation 3 bikes. So depending on the size, they've saved between 160 and 200 grams out of the frame on both the alloy and the carbon bikes. So claimed weight for this is 3.7 kilos. But the exciting news is I've just got the Trek full carbon top fuel to build up as an ongoing long-term project. So this bad boy weighs in at just 2.6 kilos, which, considering you've got the internal storage, you've got the ability to run it as a 140, 130mm mullet bike with a lifetime warranty and a rider weight limit over 130 kilos, which again is higher than most bikes in the category. It's a properly solid bike at a surprisingly competitive weight. So I'm really excited to see what I can do in terms of complete builds on this bike, both heading in the lightweight XC direction and in the heavier sort of trail or mountain direction, because that's definitely one of the biggest pros of this bike, is just how versatile it is in terms of not just how it rides as, you know, the supplied package, but what you can do with it in terms of upgrades and travel changes. So thanks for watching this technical talk round. Make sure, if you haven't already, watch the live ride review, because that will give you a good idea of how much I enjoyed riding this bike at the Ard Rock Enduro and why I was straight on the mails to Trek to go, I really like the alloy bike, but I am gagging to try the carbon one. Could I get a frame? Could I build it up as a long-termer? And we'll just explore the various varieties of bike you can build out of it over the course of a series of videos and several months of riding. They were like, sounds good to us. Frame on the way. But for now, thanks to Trek for sending in this bike for test and supplying me with the frame and other components to build up that new carbon top fuel. Thanks massively to my other industry supporters, and please remember those guys when you're shopping, because if you support them, they'll continue to support me, and I'll be able to make more videos for the channel. Also, if you really like what I'm doing here, please consider joining my Patreon subscribers whose names are scrolling up on page now, and they give a monthly subscription and they get early, extended and exclusive videos as a thank you, and they get them all ad-free. So the only interruptions is where I've forgotten something or I say the wrong thing and I have to edit it. But if you can't afford to do that right now, I mean, it's literally the price of a cup of tea and a biscuit, and it does make a huge difference to the sustainability of the channel if I'm going to pull on your heartstrings. But if you can't afford that, I fully understand, but it doesn't cost anything to give this a thumbs up like, to subscribe to the channel, or just click the notifications so you know when those next build videos and the next test videos on other products I've got come up and are ready on my feed. So, thanks for watching this far. Hope you've enjoyed this tech spec check on the Top Fuel 9, and I'll be back for more content on the carbon version as quickly as I can get it built up.